I am Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Gaur Premanandi. Hare Krishna. So, reading today from third canto, chapter 5, text 20, right? That right number? Really? That's good to know. Thanks. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Chaiva Narottamam Saraswatim Vyasam Mudirayat Nasta Prayeshu Abhadreshu Jam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Tamashloke Bhavati Naishtaki. Before, want to say this together? Before reciting Srimad Bhagavatam, which is our very means of conquest, one should offer respectful obeisances unto the personality of God and Narayan, unto Narayan, supermost human being, unto Mother Saraswati, unto Sri Vyasa, by regular attendance of classes of all that is troublesome to the heart is almost destroyed, and loving service unto the personality of Godhead, praise or transcendental song is established as an irrevocable fact. And we offer our respects to Srila Prabhupada, who translated and commentated on it. Otherwise, we wouldn't get it. Hare Krishna. So 17 to 23, you said? Sorry, what was supposed to
22. 17 to 22.
Really? Okay, that's more like it. When I saw I only had one verse, I thought, what's going on? Okay, my mistake as usual. Okay, 17. So, would you like to read that one? Thanks.
Shukadeva Goswami said, the great sage Maitreya Muni, after honoring Vidura very greatly, began to speak at Vidura's request for the greatest welfare of all people.
Sri Maitreya said, O Vidura, all glory unto you. You have inquired from me of the greatest of all goodness, and thus you have shown your mercy both to the world and to me, because your mind is always absorbed in thoughts of the transcendence.
Vidura, it is not at all wonderful that you have so accepted the Lord without deviation of thought, for you were born from the semen of Vyasadeva.
I know that you are now Vidura due to the cursing of Mandavya Muni, and that formerly you were King Yamaraj, the great controller of living entities after their death. You were begotten by the son of Satyavati, Vyasadeva. You were begotten by the son of Satyavati, Vyasadeva, in the kept wife of his brother.
Your good self is one of the eternal associates of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, for whose sake the Lord, while going back to his abode, left instructions with me.
I shall therefore describe to you the pastimes by which the personality of Godhead extends his transcendental potency for the creation, maintenance, and dissolution of the cosmic world as they occur one after another.
Okay, thanks. And our verse that we're going to talk about is this one, the 20th verse. Mandavya Shapad Bhagavan. Mandavya Shapa Bhagavan. Raja Samya Mano Yamaha. Raja Samya Mano Yamaha. Rato Kshetre Bhuishayam. Rato Kshetre Bhuishayam. Jata Satyavati Shutat. Jata Satyavati Sutat Mandavya Shapa Bhagavan Praja Samya Mano Yama Ratu Kshetre Bhuyishayam Jata Satyavati Sutat. Please chant.
Mandavya Shapad Bhagavan
Mandavya Shapad Bhagavan
Rasamya Oyama
Praja Samya Mano Yama
Kshetri Jishyayam
Ratu Kshetre Bhuyishayam
Itsuta
Praja Satyavati Sutat.
Mandavya Sapad Bhagavan
Mandavya Shapad Bhagavan
Raja Samyamano Yama
Praja Samya Mano Yama
Rata Sete Bhuji Sayam
Ratur Kshetre Bhuyishayam
Jata Sadyavati Zutat
Jata Satyavati Sutat
Mandavya Sapad Bhagavan
Mandavya Shapad Bhagavan Praja Samya Mano Yama Ratur Kshetre Bhuyishayam Rata Satyavati Sutat. Okay, so before, don't switch the, keep it up there, okay? So do you recognize any words up there? Any words that you already know the translation to? Okay, and who's that? Right. Okay, any other words you might recognize? Okay, hold on, who's over here? Yes? What word? Bhagavan, okay, all right. That was the one that's shapa. See that second word? Shapad, curse. So you know something's going on here. The curse of a Brahmin is very potent and can't be reversed. And there was some others. Did you recognize another one?
I might know it, cassette.
Kshetre?
It might be, the food.
Yeah. Well, it has, Kshetre has a lot of different meanings. So it's some like, there's some words that have a lot of different meanings, like Atma means mind, and Atma means self, and Atma means this. Kshetre means the place. Let's see what it means here exactly. Kshetre. Oh, it means in the wife here, but it's okay. Okay. Because it needs a place, so it means it's referring to in the place. Madhu? Yama. Death or Yamaraj, I think it's referring to. Let's see. Okay, well, yeah, you guys know a lot more than I thought. Yes.
Praja, like Prajapa.
And then what is Prajapa? Can't get away with it like that. Easy. Prajapa is
Speaking, nonsensical speaking.
Prajalpa. Yeah. Praja probably means, let's see what it says. I don't know. Praja, one who is born. Okay. Who talks nonsense. Okay, let's see what, here's the official trend. You want to read through it together? Go together. Mandavya, the great Rishi Mandavya Muni, Shapad, by his curse, Bhagavan, the greatly powerful, Praja, one who is born, Samyamana, the controller of death, Yama, known as Yamaraj, Ratu, of the brother, Kshetre, and the wife, Shyamam, kept, Jata, born, Satyavati, the mother of both Vitrachavirya and Vyasadeva, Sutat, by the son, Vyasadeva. And then it was Bhagavan, so that third word, Bhagavan, it was, you would, whoever said Bhagavan was the Supreme Personality of Godhead, but it refers to some great personality. So in this case, it's referring to Mandavya Muni, who was a great personality. Okay, here's the translation, the official translation. I know that you are now Vidura. Who's speaking? Remember that part? Who's speaking? Who knows that he's now Vidura? Maitreya. Maitreya and Vidura are speaking. Sukadeva Goswami is telling us about this story. Okay. I know that you are now Vidura due to the cursing of Mandavya Muni, and that formerly you were King Yamaraj. Who would ever thought that Yamaraj could be cursed? I mean, you'd have to be pretty powerful, right? Okay, the great controller of the living entities after their death. You were begotten by the son of Satyavati, Vyasadeva, in the kept wife of his brother. And we'll talk about that in a bit. Okay, you want to start the purport if that's okay with you? Thank you.
Mandyava Muni was a great sage, and Vidura was formerly the controller Yamaraj, who takes charge of the living entities after death. Birth, maintenance, and death are three conditional states of the living entities who are within the material world. As the appointed controller after death, Yamaraj once tried Mandyava Muni for his childhood profligacy and ordered him to be pierced with a lance. Mandyava, being angry with Yamaraj for awarding him undue punishment, cursed him to become a Shudra, member of the less intelligent laborer class. Thus Yamaraj took birth in the womb of the kept wife of Vichitravirya, from the semen of Vichitravirya's brother, Vyasadeva.
Okay, hold on there, because there's a lot to explain there. Okay, so if you notice, there was a reference to the first canto, 13th chapter, where that story of the cursing is explained. So I'll give it to you in a gist. So once upon a time, there were some thieves, and they had done some burglary or whatever, and stealing and mischief and everything. But what they did was they went and took refuge in this sage's ashram, Mandavya Muni. So when Srila Prabhupada says there in the first canto, he said, so when the state police came to the ashram and found the thieves there, they arrested everybody in the ashram, including Mandavya Muni, who had nothing at all to do with anything. Okay? But he was there and they just arrested everybody. So then the local administrator in the area, punished the thieves and Mandavya Muni at the same time. He just thought they were all in cahoots together, you could say. And he punished them, to be pierced. Do you remember, what's that called? The chunky? There's a specific name for that type of punishment. Sorry that I can't remember it. It's a very short name. Anyway, they put the person on a platform, a raised platform, and underneath or below, they dig a pit and they put swords, pointy uppy swords, and then they push the person off the platform to be pierced by those swords. Yeah, right. So, ouch, right? So anyway, they had Mandavya Muni up on that platform, ready to be pushed off, and he's like, whatever. And just at that time, somehow or other, by Krishna's grace, but in the nick of time, the king heard about what was going on and how his magistrate had punished everybody and was about to punish Mandavya Muni. He somehow or other, in the nick of time, stopped the thing. So why are you punishing the Muni? The Muni's, he's a saintly person. He's not under the control of the laws, and he didn't have anything to do with it, And so Mandavya Muni, being saved from that painful condition, was really upset. And he was wondering, being a sage, he realized that nothing happens by chance. It wasn't, it was a mistake, but there was something in there that was in his past or whatever. Why was he but in that particular life as Mandavya Muni, he couldn't think of anything that he had done that would merit such a severe offense. So being very powerful, and one could, we say these things really fast, and sometimes you need to take the few minutes and think about it. So it says that Mandavya Muni then went to Yamaraj and asked him. So that's not like a simple thing. He had to be very powerful to be able to go to the other world, to the other lokas, and visit Yamaraj in his abode. And he asked him, why did I get punished like that? Why was I going to be punished like that? And Yamaraj looks in his little book He didn't have to look in his book, but anyway, he knew. He said, when you were a young boy, one time you pierced an insect with a lance, with a straw. Now, that's amazing, isn't it? Think of that. Think of how many careless things that we've done in our life. I mean, there's different things, right? There's things that we do deliberately wrong. We know that we should do this, but we want to do that, and we do it. But then there's things that you do, like you're walking, and you might squish somebody, or you're driving your car, like now, and then the love bugs come and squish themselves on your window, or you squish them on your window. And you think, I didn't do that. It was, they came in my way, I didn't. Anyway, this is what Prabhupada, we've heard the phrase, right? Stringent laws of karma. Guess what? Just remember. Just remembered Srila Prabhupada, because without Srila Prabhupada, I wouldn't have known about the laws of karma. So I was definitely born in the darkness of ignorance, and Srila Prabhupada kindly opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. So I'm indebted to him and beg for service life after life, and remembrance of him and gratitude towards him life after life. Hare Krishna. So this when Prabhupada uses that phrase, the stringent laws of karma. Again, it's something we can say quickly. This is what stringent laws of karma means. And this is why Srila Prabhupada says, this material life, this human form of life or material activities are very entangling. Now, think of the situation. If Mandavya Muni was being punished for piercing an insect in his, young, you could think he's probably less than 10. He's probably like 5 or 6 years old. You know how you do weird things at that age, right? And even later. But okay. For that one act, what to speak of ourselves. Oh my gosh. So much violence that we've done, in ignorance, previous to coming to Krishna consciousness, eating all sorts of abominable things, causing all sorts of pain, not making any connection between what we're doing and what effect it's having on other people or entities or whatever. Sheesh. How entangled are we? How entangled are we? And conversely, on the upside, because who wants to just meditate on that? How fortunate we are. How fortunate we are that somehow or other, causelessly merciful Srila Prabhupada and Lord Chaitanya and etc., have brought us to this point where at least we're semi-conscious, semi-aware of a goal in life, and attempting to get there. Okay, so back to Mandavya Muni and Yamaraj. So Mandavya Muni said, I wasn't even aware that was wrong at the time, and you're punishing me so severely. So look at you. You don't deserve to be the controller of death. You should be cursed to be, you're not very intelligent. You take birth as a Sudra for that. And he was so powerful that he had the ability to curse Yamaraj. I mean, we might think we want to do something like that. Our words have no efficacy because we have no potency, because we have no purity, because we have no accumulated pious potencies, Anyway, so, but because he was so powerful, Mandavya Muni, he came in the line of Vashishta, but anyway, that curse took effect, and Yamaraj took birth as the Vichitavirya. That's the dynasty of that. Is Maharaj Shantanu was married to Satyavati, who is very interesting. It's not that Kali Yuga, just odd things go on in Kali Yuga. Odd things have gone on in different times. So Satyavati, so Maharaj Shantanu, he was the emperor of the world, great king, this, that, great dynasty, royal order, many pious credits. Somehow or other becomes attracted to this girl who's the boat woman. Satyavati, she was the daughter of a fisherman, and he had her ferry people across the river to get pious credits for herself. Anyway, whatever. Maharaj Shantanu got on the boat, got attracted to her, and he ended up marrying her. Interesting story there. They had to look all my hereditary knowledge up last night. Where did it go? Here it is. Okay, so yeah, so they had Satyavati previous to her marriage, she had a child, and she was ferrying someone else across the river, Parashara Muni. He became attracted to her, interestingly enough, and through his mystic potency, he impregnated her, and she gave birth right after the impregnation. And it was, they gave birth to Vyasadeva. So it's very interesting when you think of that. Fast forward to Kali Yuga and this and that and so many things, and the degradation of the Varnashram system, right? And the orders of society, Brahmin, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Sudra. So Srila Prabhupada writes in Nectar Devotion about how Srila Bhakti Siddhanta, one of his contributions, his appearance day tomorrow, 150 appearance. One of his contributions was he established the Daivi Varnashram system again to its fullness, because at that time the caste system had degraded so much that people were thinking that by your birth, that's who you are, and you can't change anything until you take another birth and qualify for next step up or whatever. But now, again, back to our class, Vyasadeva took birth in his own unusual way. From Satyavati, who was the daughter of a fisherman, from Parashara Muni, who was a great sage, and yet he was Vyasadeva, the great exalted personality. So it again just is a validation of the true glory of the Varnashram system, in that sense of how it's not by birth, but it's by qualification. One should be accepted as to whoever they are, which is really, the way it's supposed to be, but it's not the way that it evolved to. Okay. Would you like to continue if you can figure out where we left off? Oh, right there. Okay. Somebody. Vyasadeva is the son of Satyavati, right? That's it. That's where we are. Somebody. Which line? Vyasadeva.
Oh, Vyasadeva is the son of Satyavati by the great sage Parasar, and Vischitrayya is the son of the same Satyavati by the great king Santanu, the father of Bhisma Videva. This mysterious history of Vidura was known to Maitreya Muni because he happened to be a contemporary friend of Vyasadeva's. In spite of Vidura's birth from the womb of a kept wife, because he had otherwise high parentage and great connection, he inherited the highest talent of becoming a great devotee of the Lord. To take birth in such a great family is understood to be an advantage for attaining devotional life. Vidura was given this chance due to his previous greatness.
Thanks. Thank you, Rekha. So again, let's focus in on our story here, the storyline, and now we're going to try to pick out some of the lessons that we can get from this storyline. So, he's saying that I know he's Maitreya Muni is talking to Vidura, and he's saying, I know who you are. So, okay, another little thing just for all of you who might not be so familiar. Okay, so Vidura, okay? So you're familiar with, there's go back here. Santanu Maharaj and Satyavati, Santanu's son was Bhishma, okay? And then there was, from Santanu and Satyavati's union, there was Vichitravirya was born, and then Dhritarashtra, Vichitravirya, and Pandu. Hope I got that right. So those three brothers. So the oldest son was born blind, so he wasn't eligible to inherit the kingdom. Then Vichitravirya. Oh, Vichitravirya. Vichitravirya. Oh, he was the son of Santanu, and his other brother was Chitrangada. Okay, sorry guys. Yeah, so Chitrangada was the oldest son in that situation, but Chitrangada got into a scuffle with a Gandharva that was named Chitrangada and didn't like the fact that he had the same name. So he was killed, eliminated for that. Vichitravirya then was married to those three, was going to be married to the three daughters, ended up marrying two of them, Amba, Ambalika, and somebody other. Yeah. And so he was really attached, Vichitravirya was really attached to his two wives and ended up being overly attached to them and ended up dying at a young age. But so then there's no inheritor to the kingdom because Vichitravirya didn't produce any children. So then here's where the interesting history in Vedic culture or Vedic literature is. So because they were a royal family and there was no person to inherit the throne, Satyavati, the grandmother now, she calls her son Vyasadeva, and he impregnates the two queens. And that's a bona fide solution to it. He impregnates the two queens, and they're considered the sons of the king. And then, so the two queens, they had a hard time accepting their union with Vyasadeva because Vyasadeva had been performing austerities in the mountains for so long that when he came before them, he wasn't the most polished looking personality and handsome and attractive like that. He was like a rough stone, you could say, a rough gem, but having performed severe austerities, etc., etc. So one of them, when she saw him, she goes, and she turns white. She gives, well, actually, one of them is the first one. She decides, I can't look at him. And so when they had their union, their son was born blind. That was Vidura there. He was born blind. The second one, when she saw Vyasadeva come to her, she goes, and she turns white. And then she has a son named Pandu, he was a pale complexion. And then when there was deficiencies in the children that were produced in order to again have the kingdom ruled by a strong, healthy, competent leader, Satyavati had Vyasadeva go a third time, a second time to one of the queens who thought, I'm not doing this again. So she put forth her maidservant, and she united with Vyasadeva, and that's how Vidura was born. So Vidura was born from that coupling, and therefore that's why that term is used, kept son of a maidservant, or kept son of the kept wife. Sorry, kept wife. So Vidura, he grew up in the palace, but he wasn't entitled to inherit the throne. But he was very wise. Now, this is, again, now Yamaraj taking birth in this low family. So you think that's very interesting, isn't it? Because even this situation, a similar situation happened at the time when the demigods, when the earth was being disturbed by the bellicose forces on the planet Earth. They were all the kings that had accumulated so many armies, and there was lots of fighting going on, right? The people on the earth and the demigods were so disturbed by that situation, they went to Lord Brahma and prayed for a solution. And so Lord Brahma, along with the demigods, go to Lord Vishnu and ask him to come and make a solution to the problem. And Vishnu says, no problem, it's time for me to appear again. I'll come on the earth, and you demigods should also appear with me. And they said, okay, great, that's great. We'll get to partake in your pastimes and everything. So there they were, demigods in the higher planetary systems, taking birth in the Yadu dynasty. And if you remember in your first few chapters of the 10th canto, it describes that the members of the Yadu dynasty at that time were so harassed by King Kamsa that many of them left the kingdom and took shelter in caves. So there they were, demigods, in a very opulent, materially opulent position, taking birth to associate with Krishna in his pastimes on earth, and they end up in caves, living in caves for some time. So things aren't always the way you think they're going to be. So similarly, Vidura, as Yamaraj, there he is in a very exalted, very respectable, very fearful position. Everyone's afraid of Yamaraj, you know. And then he takes birth as the son of a maidservant in the palace. So he's got some status, but not very much status. But let's think about what are some of the lessons that we can take. So that's a little bit of the background story, and you've heard a little bit of the reason why it happened. But what are some of the lessons that we can learn from this story? Because there's lots of different points. Madhu, Prabhu?
Okay. So one thing that comes up is that we don't know who we're sitting next to. We don't know who we're like around. We don't know what their relationship with Krishna is, and they may seem to, however we may perceive them, as lower than, but we really don't know what their service is and what their relationship with Krishna is. So it just reminds me of Srila Prabhupada saying that when the new people would come, that he would see them as expansions of his Guru Maharaj, like he would treat them in that way as if he was treating his Guru.
Nice. And Prabhupada said in relation to that, he said, sometimes when he would praise his disciples, he would say, oh, you're all sent by my Guru Maharaj. They'd say, oh, Prabhupada, what pious activities have we done? You know, we've led such sinful lives. He said, yes, but when I called, you came. That's not by chance. There's something there. Okay, good. Other things, other different lessons. Like just think of the situation of Mandavya Muni. Like any things, any takeaways from that, or any other part? Dvaita Prabhu?
Yeah, it still, in a way, bothers me.
Okay.
You know, how the magnitude of consequences.
Yeah.
And sometimes it doesn't feel right. Because he is a small child, right?
Right.
And I mean, we understand there's really no responsibility up to a certain age.
Things changed after that. Yamaraj changed his rulings, you know, and so up to a certain point, then the child isn't, you know, he doesn't get the reaction for those things. But previously they did, so yes.
Yeah. So yeah, it's just it's a nice reminder that, you know, everything we do outside of, well, both outside of Krishna consciousness and also within the Krishna consciousness, how important it is to, you know, to be affirmative, not to make assumptions, and if you do have to, let's make positive ones. Yeah, there's a whole lot of good takeaways from that.
There is, isn't there? And thank you for sharing that. Anything else that anyone struck? Anyone else? Yes, Prabhu.
Yes, in the case of giving birth to Pandu and Dhritarashtra and Vidura, things do not always go as planned, and so it's nice to keep that in mind and to tolerate whatever outcomes or results we might have to our circumstances, and to push forward.
Yeah, and like again, you know, when we get these reminders, we think, yes, I'm going to remember that the next time I'm in some circumstance or whatever. I'm going to try to be more tolerant. I'm going to not try to find fault with this one or that one or whatever. But it's so hard because we've developed these bad habits of assumption, superiority, this and that, judgment, and this and that. Yeah, too. Madam, did you have another thing you wanted to add? Kartik. Oh, thank you for that. I'm so sorry.
I
Hare
was
Krishna.
afraid to say anything.
At least you
So
knew
I
who
just took it.
talking
I was gonna
about.
say afterwards, but
Hare Krishna.
yeah, I was thinking that
Hare Krishna.
these stories kind of show us that this isn't the all in all, actually. That we come from somewhere and we're gonna go somewhere else, and in all those circumstances, one thing that remains to be there is our service to Krishna. Like Yamaraj, he comes across as scary, but he's serving Krishna the whole time. And as Vidura, what does he do? He just serves Krishna, goes out on pilgrimage, and teaches others about Krishna.
Nice. Yes, Prabhu, next to you.
I was just reflecting on the comparison between this pastime and the one with Ajamil, where he was so he was so sinful his whole life, you know, and just by chanting the name of his son Narayan, he didn't even know what he was doing. Yamaraj saved him. No, it wasn't Yamaraj; it was Vishnudutas that saved him. That's right. But I was just comparing the two situations. How, you know, somebody did like something quote unquote small and got a big punishment, but then just chanting the name once, then he got saved.
Yeah.
So
How merciful is the Lord? Yes.
I rather like how Vidura is Yamaraj, who's one of the Mahajans, and yet he's surrendering himself to the instruction of Maitreya Muni. And there's in one of the verses, I can't remember which one that we read this morning, it talks about how he was asking questions, and it says, for the sake of the living entities. So we never know, you know, we never know who will be the recipient of the questions that we ask. So no matter where we are in our development of transcendental knowledge, we should always be willing to inquire and surrender to the person who's in the position of teaching.
Thank you. That also reminds me also of by regularly attempting to execute devotional service, at certain points you might have a question and you'll be able to understand it in a certain way. But, and Prabhupada says this often about reading. He said, the books are so potent that you can read it again and you'll get some more points from it. Oh, you didn't understand it in that way. Oh, that's interesting. I hadn't thought about that before. So there's always that reciprocation going on. Thank you. Yes, dear.
I was thinking how every living entity is subject to the four defects, every conditioned being, even the demigods. Yamaraj made a mistake, which is one of the four defects, but because he's a devotee, his conditioning is kind of used in a transcendental way. So I'm thinking about this in terms of devotees. Even the mistakes we make or our conditioning or whatever negative aspects we have, if we're devoted to Krishna, then Krishna will use even that for his own service. Like, it seems like he made a mistake and it seems like he was punished, but he wasn't. He was just being used by Krishna for his desire.
Yeah, very good point. And that's kind of one of the points that I was thinking of too. You know, so sometimes, like in different stories of the Bhagavatam, let's take the story of, was it Indradumna? Indradumna Maharaj had ruled the kingdom, and then at a certain point he retired from his kingly duties, went to the forest, and he was meditating, and he was very advanced. He was, he was very absorbed in his meditation. One time in his meditation, he was so absorbed in his meditation, even though a great sage, I think it was Agastya Muni, came in to pass by or whatever, seemingly caused trouble, but whatever. So he came in, and the Maharaj didn't acknowledge him. Similar story happens often, and so the sage becomes offended and curses him. That point, you're so dull. You might as well take birth as an elephant. You're just dull like an elephant because you don't realize what my glory is, and I'm here, and you didn't offer me respects. So, and he does, even though that Indradumna Maharaj had lived a proper life, etc., executing his duty as a king and Kshatriya, and then executing his duty as a Vanaprastra, and the sage in the forest, etc. He got cursed. So if we were there, we had a little cell phone, and we could take a picture just as the Muni came in and cursed him. We could put it up on the internet and say, look how unfair this is. This is not fair. But obvious, and so because we're seeing with our eyes the situation. That's why Prabhupada says we have to learn to see through the eyes of the scriptures, through hearing. We have to learn to see through hearing. And this is again the general understanding of these stories. The circumstances are such that looks like Maharaj Indradumna or whatever, or even Parikshit Maharaj got cursed untimely and unfairly and unjustly by, whatever. But there's a plan by the Lord. That's the point. There's a plan by the Lord. So what's a take home? What's a take home for us is when things are going rough, when things are tough, when things are unfair, when I just got this, or when I got fired, or I got yelled at, or I got this, or whatever, and I didn't do it, but somehow or other, Krishna there's a plan, there's something there. Probably I did something in my past life to deserve it. That's like covers most of it. I did something in my past life to deserve this reaction right now. And Krishna, what does Lord Brahma say? 10:14:8. He says, I must have done something bad, but Krishna's just giving me a little slap. Just like you gave the example of Ajamil. Ajamil had performed so many sinful activities in the middle age of his life, and yet by just calling his son, but his son whose name was Narayan, he got so much benefit. So similarly, again, our take home for us and our application in our life, don't, or try not to, or at least at this point while we're remembering the full scope of the philosophy, pray to the Lord that we'll be able to remember that at different times that we're tested in our life. We can pray forward for the proper reaction when we are tested in our life with some unjust treatment or something this or something that we're feeling that we don't, we're looking out for the cause of our suffering instead of looking inward. What have I done? And yet what I've done, I deserve way more, but Krishna's so kind. He's just giving me this little lesson, this little chastisement, this little upheaval in my life. And just that change of perspective, look how different it affects us and our outlook and our attitude and our progress for going on. Have you ever met people recently who have a total negative attitude on life and towards others? They're really hard to be around because they're seeing, I didn't deserve this, and this is happening to me, and then that one is doing this and that, and they're hard to be around to hear that energy. But how do you get to that place? Or how do you get out of that place? Let's put it that way. How's that? How do we get out of that mentality of thinking this is unjust, or I don't deserve it, or the world's against me, or whatever, all of those, there's lots of varieties of that, but is to remember, Prabhupada says, this human form of life is such a is such a rare opportunity. Now, normally you wouldn't think that it's a rare opportunity because there's lots of people all around, right? But then when you think of it in terms of the Vedic knowledge, that there's 8,400,000 species of life, and one has to traverse through all the species of life at a certain point in time in order to get even to a human form of life. Whoa, that puts a different perspective on it, doesn't it? And it also makes us be a little more thoughtful about how do I utilize my life? Just, the practical things. Yes, we sit here and we say, yes, you should utilize every second of your day remembering Krishna and this and that. And we think, yeah, Haribol. And then, you got to go to school and go to work and do so many things, et cetera, et cetera. But how do we have to try to bring that remembrance forward in our mind, remembering things and then acting in a way that makes our life auspicious, not auspicious in the material sense, but auspicious in our spiritual progress. And that's an art. And so how do we fine tune that art? By constantly hearing and remembering, because we hear it once and we semi get it, to whatever capacity we have. We get it from the different things that we read, and we can put the connection between this and that and this and that. But then again, like we've said, the practical application is another thing, and that takes practice. Do you have a comment or question?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Okay, you're done.
That's okay.
I was gonna ask,
Uh-huh.
like when you said like Krishna giving a little slap to whoever, isn't that like the consequences that you pay for your past life? Isn't that like same thing as karma, or is the karma like a totally different concept?
There's different understanding of karma, okay? So for a materialistic person who doesn't have any concept of God, there's karma, and et cetera, et cetera. Every action has an equal and opposite reaction, or not necessarily, but anyway, there's a reaction to everything you do. Pious activities, you get a good check, and bad things, you get a bad check, et cetera, et cetera. And it's all very mechanically disposed by the laws. That's what it means, laws of nature. But when somebody comes to attempt to surrender to Krishna, then it's a different jurisdiction. Karma doesn't work in the same way. So we try to make our activities Krishna centered, et cetera, et cetera. And so there's reaction and stuff, but it's customized. It's customized by Krishna. So sometimes if you're ever we used to have, back in the old days, we used to have sayings on, like, if you're ever in the kitchen on Ekadasi day and you cut your finger, and somebody will say, oh, Prabhu, you're really fortunate. You should have cut your hand off, but you just cut your finger. That's our way of being very compassionate. Oh, it's a good thing. You should have cut your hand off. Well, hello. But anyway, but still, that the point is that it's customized. Krishna arranges it in such a way. It's called Krishna karma. So does that help? Does that answer?
Yes, wait, so it's called Krishna
Karma?
That's an unofficial term that I use lightly, but it is used. Krishna karma usually means that you get a reaction right away. Doesn't always happen right away. That's another thing that makes karma a wonderful concept to try to understand, because there's the action. Let's say it's a negative action, and then there's the reaction. But between the action and the reaction, there's the time factor. And that time factor often means you don't make the connection between what's happening to you now to what you did in the past. Because what you did in the past might have been in another life. And now you're getting it this life. Because we have so much storage of past pious and impious activities from millions of lifetimes, right? Not as millions of lifetimes as human beings, not as animals. Animals don't get karma. But human beings get karma because the intelligence is supposedly developed enough that they should understand that there's repercussions. So yeah, so that factor, the time factor between the action and the reaction, a lot of times people can't, and that's why they think it's unjust. That and even, let's just say in this example, this Mandavya Muni, he couldn't remember that he had done anything wrong, because ever since he was grown up enough to be conscious of his activities, he didn't do anything quote unquote wrong. He always acted properly. But previous to that, when his consciousness was less developed, played around, did a little mischief, innocent as it was. But 1 second, Prabhu, yes.
So in the text that you mentioned, the purport to that text 10:14:8,
Yes.
which is Brahma's prayers after stealing the cowherd boys and calves and finding out, I made a
He just
mistake.
took him for a second.
So there, Prabhupada calls it special mercy. When we get the reactions as devotees, he says it's not technically karma, but it's the Lord's special mercy trying to purify us from any remaining subtle desire to enjoy. And so it becomes like our curriculum rather than karma, technically.
What
And-
lessons we have to learn.
Yeah, and I would recommend going and reading 10:14:8. That verse and purport is extremely helpful in this
Yeah.
regard.
Yeah, thanks. I said, wait to Prabhu. Do I have your name right? Yeah, right. Okay.
Yes,
Sorry.
Hare Krishna. Madhu is fine too.
That's what okay. This will be Madhu and this will be Radha. Okay, go ahead.
Haribo. I was just thinking, thank you so much for your class. I was
Hare
just thinking along this, the whole drama of a material world, which never really stops. According to the drama triangle, you have a victim, prosecutor, and the rescuer, right? But the way to make it auspicious, and seems like in all these stories, there's an element of humility that or pridelessness. And funny enough, in a list of factors of knowledge from the 13th chapter in the Gita, there's actually a double emphasis: humility, pridelessness, as two separate. Seems like that's the kind of the key element in making it auspicious. And auspicious is something, according to one definition, is that things that are suitable for success.
Suitable for success.
That's
auspicious.
meaning
Nice.
is auspicious, yeah. So to make it auspicious, seems like humility in all these stories is something that makes a difference. Otherwise, what will be the difference between, it will be an interesting question. What happened to Mandavya Muni?
Yeah.
After that.
Interesting, yeah.
And for all those devotees who have taken the curses, there's always, like Kunti was saying, that the Krishna factor that kicked in and made it auspicious, made Krishna walk through. And thing that actually interferes with that, it's our defensiveness, right? We point out.
We point out, we're looking out.
There's injustice, like you said, there's injustice. So being defensive will interfere with Krishna's plan, and being humble or prideless will actually allow that supreme power to unfold in a most auspicious way.
Thank you for that. That's very nice, very nice. And so we can meditate on that during the day, because it's easy to say, and when the false ego is kicked, or however the circumstance is, it's hard to apply. But this is what association means. I'm going to end right now. This is what association means. Association means that we remind each other. Somehow or other, part of the whole mix of the material world is somehow or other, it's easy to see what other people should be learning from their lessons than it is from us. But if we help others, then we'll get the help when we need it. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.